You have returned to Kedarnath or to SRV Loka and its live streaming channel. We were speaking in the last half about channels, call them nadis. Even in the physical world, there are many subtle nadis, like channels going into people's computers and homes and so forth, that energy is flowing along. And all of this is just another extension of the physical prana in the scientific and technological world. But we're wanting more and more to turn towards subtle nerves and how consciousness moves along them into dream and deep sleep, and or from ignorance into awareness, into enlightenment, however you want to put it. Senses actually carry a kind of subtle power too. Power of the eye to see and power of the ear to hear is a very subtle thing when you meditate on it. And we should meditate on it. Father of Yoga tells us that we should meditate on the 5 elements and the 5 senses and what happens to them in dream and deep sleep. He called the art of alambanic meditation, he called it. And the commentators, some good 40 of them in India that are touted most highly, and then a few of the more contemporary ones in the West even have come upon that teaching of alambanas and how to take everything and meditate upon it. It's another version of what I was saying and teaching in the first half about Shravana, to hear, Manana, to consider, and contemplate, and Nidhyasana, to realize. So the realization of the presence of subtle nerves, nadis, there's a word for it, and there's teachings around it. We've looked at that in the first half with this chart. And for instance here, and take more of these quotes from, this time from the great Rishi Svetashvatar. In this Svetashvatar Upanishad, he says, "There in the heart, where all the subtle nerve endings meet, like the spokes of a chariot wheel at the hub, abides the Atman, stationary but becoming manifest. Meditate on that self as Om, and God speed to you in crossing over to the farthest shore beyond all darkness." Ara Eva Ratanabal Samhatra Yatra Nadyaha. We know this in Sanskrit amongst our SRV students, and even that God speed to you in crossing over to all beyond all darkness, to the farthest shore beyond all darkness, was our kids, SRV kids, when they want to let you into their special fort. They'll say, well, you have to repeat that in Sanskrit and English before you can get in. So we have to say, God speed to you, crossing over to the farthest shore beyond all darkness, and then they'll open the door and let you in, because they're out somewhere doing their own teachings, you see, getting their own Dharma teachings from SRV teachers. So we become very serious and very obvious about bringing out teachings of the Dharma, because you don't find them anywhere else so pronounced. And Dharma has become a word that is more associated with Buddhism in this day and age, but of course it's there all the way back to the idea of Sanatana Dharma, Indian Dharma, this eternal religion that we've been talking about. So those are, you might say there's a sort of grunty or veil in the way of people seeing the Dharma. And you can talk yourself until you're blue in the face, like I say, like Vishnu. Probably got blue in the face by trying to teach Westerners Dharma. So, you know, they're not turning to it, they're not taking to it. It's not in their lifetime samskaras, European kind of things, or more, you know, Middle Eastern things maybe, but anything from Far East and Sanatana Dharma that goes back, beyond Jesus and Moses and Abraham even, is not entertained. Those teachings were there at the time. That's one of the marvelous things, is that you can even carbon date Vedas and Upanishads and so forth to a very ancient time. So whether or not they were the first or the last is a matter for argumentation and futile debate. But what is not arguable and what's most wonderful is that this knowledge was there in that form at that early date early a time, that there were hundreds and thousands of nadis moving through the heart, long before Moses and so the mind then must have been studied by these great souls like Svetashvatara and before him, in his incarnations before him, because he came back probably many times along his own family line, because the father is just the extension, the son is just the extension of the father, and so forth. That's more than just heredity and genes and family lines. It has also an inward implication that goes back to your spiritual ancestors, the ones that got over their desire for earth and heaven and transmigration and went on to higher worlds. We won't go into that in such a way in this chart, because I say, we have YouTube classes and so forth that you can look back and hear me explicate all of these different levels of teachings and where all these channels go, and how far they'll take you, and how some of them are dead ends, and how some of them throw you back on earth, and how some of them lead you to myriads of problem of wandering and ignorance in Maya, and how some souls can penetrate that and attend upon the higher levels, until finally the Vaakdevi, the mother of all words and all intelligence and all meaning, appears, and then the seers see her and compose songs to her. Vani Saraswati Vaakdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampali Veenapani Hamsavahini Vedanta Rupini Valayamam Vani Saraswati Vaakdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampali. And other verses. Vedanta Rupini Palayamam. She's the author of the Vedanta. She's the composer of the spiritual systems. She's at the hub and head of everything, as well as at its end. She's the beginning, middle, and ends of all things. And so this would be the great revelation brought to us by the Kali Avatar, Sri Ramakrishna. We say, like last week we say, Parama Guru Siddha Yogi, Parama Guru Siddha Yogi, Matri Bhakta Yugavatar. He's the Matri Bhakta, the devotee of the Divine Mother of the Universe. He's the Yuga avatar. He's the avatar of this age who came to bring Mother Wisdom. He's Paramahamsa Sri Ramakrishna, Paramahamsa Sri Ramakrishna, Laho Pranam Namaskar. So we pay our salutations to it. Namaskar. So he was the one that loved God first and foremost, who wanted to see the highest through all religious paths, not just through Hinduism and the Sanatana Dharma and its umbrella, which is vast and mighty and thick with Dharma teachings, but through all the other religions too, and have those kinds of realizations. I was reading about his spiritual son, Rakal, also known later as Swami Brahmananda, and also called a world teacher, Jagat Guru, that he was at a Christmas gathering in Calcutta there when he was alive, or maybe it was at one of the monasteries of the Ramakrishna order, and I think one of the American devotees was there, a woman, disciple of Vivekananda. And they had this beautiful big arati in this room. You see, the food was brought and offered, kind of a puja arti going on. And Swami Brahmananda said he was sitting there witnessing it all, just taking it in. And all of a sudden, a man in a blue cloak stood up in the audience and turned and started speaking to him and spoke to him for many, many minutes. And it was Jesus. Jesus was there in this gathering. And Swami Brahmananda, only he heard them. So he's so deep into the puja, and he's such a great soul. He has such a high mind, and is open to all these, has nadis open to all these great channels into these great worlds, that finally Christ just appeared to him, stood up there and talked. They talked for a while. He said it was beautiful to hear him speak. So you have access to that. I mean, this was in 1800s, you see. So you have access to that if you think on that. If you don't think on it, it never occurs to you. So this is the power of the kingdom of heaven within, which is your mind, which we were talking about at the break is not your brain only. You see, you'd be stymied or limited greatly if you tried to find all these in the brain. Somebody was saying it was sort of like opening up a radio to try and find out where those words were. And all the things that they were describing on the radio, they're not here. So opening up just the brain is not going to show you words and various things that are coming, we guess, from the brain, you see, through the tongue and so forth. So it's this connection of tattvas or alambanas, meditating on them, making their connections to reopen these pathways. Knock and it shall be opened. I mean, there must have been a lot of closed nadis in Jesus' time. You've got the Romans on one hand and the Pharisees with irreligion on the other hand, and money lenders in the marketplace, all these things on all sides, and people unaware of the teachings. They're unaware of the fact that they needed to become fishers of men, and unaware of the fact that man does not live by bread alone. There was prana. So a great soul like Jesus would come amongst them and try and open up these channels with words. And these words need to be heard. Dravana, they have to be taken in and meditated upon. Manana, and they need to be realized. And if you can't go part way with that, so, three kind of level teaching, a triputi, they call it in India, many good triputis. So it reminds me of the realms that are also put forth in Hinduism as we shift over to this other chart to make sure we get another look at the kingdom of heaven inside of us. And of course, this teaching has more to do with calling the mind Lord Brahma. Not Brahman, because that's the formless reality in our tradition, but Brahma, who is the creator or projector of all the worlds, the first of the Trinity, who is followed by Vishnu and the avatars that come from him, and Shiva, who just dissolves it all back. So this constant tempest in a teapot, philosophically speaking, is being projected, sustained, and withdrawn, which is a better way than saying creation, preservation, and destruction, because nothing really ever gets created, nothing gets destroyed. It just gets projected, sustained for a while, and then leaves its relative existence and goes back to its essence. And that, so life, birth, life, and death is a triputi that's worth hearing, Shravana, and then meditating upon, to find out that that I have no death because I was never born, as Shankara says, and then that's nididhyasana. So if you're able to hear it, meditate upon it, and then make a conclusion about it, you accept it, you don't doubt it anymore, there's nothing in the way of your understanding, then that's revelation, and you can move on to the next triputi and realize that. Like maybe the next triputi would be creation, preservation, and destruction, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. What does that mean? You see, who are they? Where are they? And then you meditate on that, and you find them inside of yourself as great powers, and you find yourself as a miniature creator, preserver, and destroyer. That's what you're doing with everything in your life, projecting it, trying to keep it alive, and then watching it dissolve. So at the same time, having desire, and then attachment and shocked surprise when you find out you can't make it live very long. See, isn't that another triputi? So then you have to meditate upon that triputi. Oh, my desire that made me project it, and then my hope, you see, my attachment that made me enjoy it while it was there. Then my shock surprise at it not being able to keep it alive anymore, whether it be a rose plant or a child. So these are all exercises of the mind. And if you have fear and doubt, that will keep you from doing these exercises. You can't have fear, you have to be fearless. This is what she's holding up a sickle for, and various, a trident and so forth. It's what she's known for, is fearlessness. And you might be able to sing to her in another way about her whole series of worlds too. When you might sing, Mono Holy Bhajakali, Icha Hoi Torjaya Chari, Guru Data Ma Mantra, Divane Shi Japa Kore, Mono Holy Bhajakali. Oh, playful mind, that mind that wants, that mind that projects, that mind that desires, that mind that sports in the fields of the Lord. Oh, playful mind, meditate on the mystery of Kali. It's sort of like at the same time saying, use your mind to meditate on what's beyond the mind. And meditate upon her using any method of worship you please. The method of knowledge, the method of devotion, the method of meditation, the method of selfless action, the 4 yogas, and meditate on her and using any method you want. Or simply breathe day and night her holy name as the living seed of transforming power planted by the Guru in your heart. So somewhere you went and heard from the scriptures, Shravana, and then you went to a teacher, you heard from him, and he told you how to meditate on it, Manana, and then you went and did your business, and you got nidijasana from it. Maybe your whole life got transformed, and all you did was think about Brahman from then on, and Mammon never came into the picture again. All became Brahman to you, like the Avatut singing those beautiful verses we had in the first half. So he goes on, Shayane pranamagyan, nidrai koro makejan. Shayane pranamagyan, nidrai koro makejan. Ahar koro, moni koro, ahuti shamamare, kono poli bhajakali. He says, now consider the act of lying down to sleep as devoted offering to Mother Kali, and allow your dreams to become radiant meditations upon her. Further, as you wander through the countryside or through the city, feel that you are moving through Mother Kali, through her body. Like you went through the forest and you see all those trees are her hairs. I'm moving on her scalp. See, have you ever had that feeling? That Mother has become everything? And so if you're thinking of it that way, from what you heard, from your guru who planted that in your heart, and then you go out and you get the actual experience of it, it could translate all the way back to the physical world for you. It's not just going into the mind and having beautiful dreams, but if you do, he says, allow your dreams to become radiant meditations upon her. So the act of lying down to sleep is a meditation for you. It's not just, oh, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to get up. Alarm clock, work, same thing next day. See? And without ever knowing or questioning or reasoning. He goes on, because I have a tickle in my throat, I won't sing it, but he goes on saying, all sounds you hear are her natural mantras, repeating spontaneously as the whole world worships her, knowingly or unknowingly. Goddess Kali constitutes the letters of every alphabet, and each letter secretly bears the flower and the power of her name. I mean, Ramprasad can't put it any clearer for you. And if you've studied the Dharma, those words will impress you. See, if you haven't heard the Dharma, those will seem mystical to you, see. Maybe a little bit, oh, I got chicken skin brought out, you see. Basically, I really like those words. I don't really know what they mean, but I like them, you see. And maybe I got to go find a teacher who will shravana them to me, you see. So then he goes on saying, the letters of every alphabet constitute her, and each letter secretly bears the flower of her name. So it's not just the sentences, the words, then finally the letters, then down to each letter bears the power of her name. That's how deeply you're going to go with your manana. So, just hearing separate the wheat from the chaff and walking away, I think I understand that, even symbolically, philosophically or religiously. But now I'm going to have to understand it on a deeper level, that who's hiding there, and how do I bring her out from hiding? See? So he concludes by saying, the Divine Mother exists fully through every living creature. O wandering poet, whatever food or drink you receive, offer as oblation into the sacrificial fire of your body, and meditate intensely on her all-encompassing reality. So a beautiful bhajan there in Bengali by the poet Saint Ramprasad Sen, whom probably 1700 or so, Sri Ramakrishna later in the 1800s just loved his songs. He loved to hear his songs sung, because that man had a particular naughty opening, see, that took him towards Mother. There are stories of him once he had a daughter, you see, so once he was outside putting up a lattice work around a fence, and his wife was on one side of the long hedge and he was on the other, so they were keeping the strings together as it went around, you see. And so he kept working, and pretty soon he finished the thing, and then all of a sudden his wife came up to him and said, how'd you get that finished? He said, what do you mean? He says, I was gone for like half hour. Who was holding the other end? So he thought that Divine Mother came and helped him finish the lattice work, and his wife didn't tell him he went away. So there's all sorts of beautiful stories in the tradition indicative of the deep faith of the one who tries to bring out the secret of all secrets, the Divine Mother of the universe, and how she's behind everything, Shakti power we like to call it, and how she will take you through the final doorway into the highest reality, beyond even visions and great teachings and visions into this nirvikalpa samadhi, or nirvana as they call it. So let's shift over here in the remaining time to Lord Brahma's universal projection, which I just gave more or less a preamble to. And you can see that the first quote there is from the Brahma Upanishad. Unto him was imparted the supreme wisdom of Brahman. He is Atman and he is Prana. He represents both the life and death of the gods. He controls them and the jivas through his prana, which belongs to the nadis. In dreamless sleep, they pass through that state into their own abode, like a falcon piercing the sky to rest in its own nest. So poetic and mystical, also using some words that you will hear from Dharma teachers, Vedanta and so forth, and yoga. Words like nadis are there in that Upanishad, which brings us back to this chart, how the prana flows along the nadis, and it's all coming from the Trinity, the level of the Trinity, you see, which is a very high level, a very high transcendent heaven. And it's been put in different ways and said in different ways, like this one, the path, the three paths, the Tiryan Marga, path of the lower births, the Pitayana, the path of the fathers, and the Devayana, the path of the gods. So there you see an image of the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and the arrows dissecting that, moving inwards, deeper inwards, towards the transcendent reality, which is Brahman. So remember to make that distinction between Brahman and Brahma. But it was to Brahma that this wisdom of Brahman was given, this eternal Sanatana Dharma we've been talking about. And he, of all forms, represents Atman and Prana exceptionally well. The avatars that come out of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva would also be the same. They'd be representing the highest manifestation of the highest teachings. Other quotes there from the same Upanishad, Brahma Upanishad, you would think that would be the Upanishad of Lord Brahma. In the waking state, he is Brahma. In the dreaming state, he is Vishnu. In the deep sleep state, he is Rudra. That's a name for Shiva. And in the fourth state, he is the supremely indestructible one. So there you're talking about AUM, or Om, which we just heard talked about here in this song. This is about every alphabet and every letter of every alphabet bearing the flower of her name, and how you're to meditate on this mantra and using the word Om and so forth to reach this highest realization. So Om, spelled A-U-M philosophically correctly, is waking, dreaming, and deep sleep is one of its major assignments. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva is another for A-U-M. But then there's a little shwara, which is the little one-eyed smile, that's not connected to the main Sanskrit letter. And that represents the indestructible one, or transcendent reality, or they call that Turiya. Turiya just means the fourth, so it means of the three levels of consciousness, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, then there's a fourth, which is beyond those. Waking would be like the lower worlds, the three, and dreaming, moving into the third and fourth world, and deep sleep moving into the higher worlds where form begins to disappear. And Turiya, of course, is the highest, where you would see the merging of Shiva and Shakti, of the dynamic power of Brahman with Brahman itself, or Paramashiva. A little bit more of the flavoring of Tantra in this way of thinking, but still holding to the precepts of the Vedas. So very interesting that at the same time the Upanishad also states in another one of its chapters, neither do worlds exist nor not exist, neither do the Vedas or Devas exist or not exist. Neither does the father and mother exist or not exist. Only Brahman shines there. So all dualities and all triputis too would disappear as consciousness moves higher into deep sleep, called sushupti, and into turiya, the fourth state, or call it samadhi or satori or nirvana or formless reality, Advaita. In that way, then, Brahma Upanishad shows off its deep, deep manana of its own on a very spiritual level, and offers up these gems and jewels for our consideration. Now, following again these arrows that dissect the middle, then you would say the Tiryan Marga is the path of the lower births. And so we mentioned in the last class that you had the Muladhara Chakra and how that was the realm of return. Sri Krishna would call that the smoky path, you might say. The two great paths of the world I created, the path of darkness, the path of light. By the path of darkness they come and go to return again, and by the path of light they come and then go never to return again, he says in the Gita. So these paths are great pathways, or great nadis, channels. Sushumna, Ida, and Pingala, in Kundalini way of thinking, and male and female and neuter and so forth. I mean, all of these kinds of teachings apply to these, but not just on the outward worlds, but as deeper understanding occurs to the soul, how the whole thing is a dream and whose dream is it. In this case, at the cosmic level, it's the dream of the Trinity. And you can't, if you go beyond them, form will disappear. In the meantime, if you don't know anything about them, if you forget about them, you get far flung down the nadis. Your intelligent particles get dispersed. Your memory goes away, and ignorance takes its place. Then you find yourself here in the path of the lower births, and those are paths of return again and again, not just once. Dark, smoky paths, and the yogis might use a dark, smoky path, but they do it risk-free, as it were. But the ignorant people fall again and again into these, as Buddha says in the Dhammapada, again and again into these lower forms of birth. They're blind, because he says it as it is. These beings are blind to attend this world. And so we're to think that maybe their third eyes are not open, or have never been opened, or it's been a long time since they've been opened. And somebody or some way has got to occur to them by which they can open these higher nadis, because the third eye is usually, with the Agya Chakra, is associated with very high levels beyond the gods even. And so that's going to be a chakra or a center that has to have special nadi going with it, that carries a powerful force of mother to open the way, shine a light. Otherwise, there are teachings in the Kundalini Yoga which you encounter nectars on your way on this inner vision, but you also encounter poisons. So there could be a poison of misorientation at that level. Your third eye is open, but it's still blurry. It's still got sleep on it, you see. So proceeding by levels of that are guided by wise teachings and the process of intensification we were talking about, separating the wheat from the chaff to the nth degree until the last breath of your life, if you will, is what's going on. And it doesn't usually occur to even the Pitris to do this. So the beings of lower path, I mean, you could say animals, insects, and so forth, even plants, because there are of course pathways in Buddhism and Hinduism and so forth that talk about the fact that human beings can even fall into a lower form. It's probably not likely. Once a human, always a human, one would think. But if you look into the eyes of a dog, or you look into nature and so forth, you have to feel like there's some sort of intelligence and consciousness there, even if it's just primal or basic, fundamental. So there is a sort of presence living in each form, and one hates to say, oh, it's just nervous energy in the case of an insect, you know, because it still has body and senses and so forth. So whatever the case may be, these forms are there, and they come back by the millions and billions. And that also occurs to human beings in a darksome state. We might as well just put the animals and insects aside for now and just look at the humans, because they have potential and they're not using it. They've fallen into a very benighted state. Their consciousness is not awake and open, and they can even develop their intellect very strong, you know, scientifically and medically and you know, at the collegiate level and so forth, but still have no idea whatsoever where they came from, where they're going, and their belief is in matter, and their belief is in death. Their fear is in death. And so these things are not allowable to the spiritual seeker. They're not real, so you, part of the chaff that you push aside when you do your practice. What did you hear from your teacher, Shravana? Oh, you will never die because you were never born. So then I took that into Manana and I thought about it. Yeah, he's right, you know. I'm a birthless, deathless soul. And I can begin to remember my past lifetimes. And if I had past lifetimes, I died in them. But I never really died, did I? Because here I am again. So you cannot do away with the existence of consciousness. You cannot discriminate away the one who's doing the discriminating. So you're that, which is these small mantras that the song is just telling us. You know, meditate on every letter of every alphabet and so forth. So you can take apart the word tat in Tatvamasi, like the commentators on the Brahma Sutras have done, and go on for pages and chapters on what it means, on one letter. Or you can look into the Sadakya system of Tantra and Vedanta and see the 6 ways to get to Brahman, and basically words, alphabets, mantras, worlds, channels, and gods, beings. Like 6 different ways in which the word has manifested itself out from causal to subtle to gross, and beings have followed it and apportioned themselves, pinioned themselves sometimes into these worlds, into bodies in these worlds, and then fallen into the delusion that they are the body in that world. Case in point, Bhur-loka. So this is what my explication of Tiranya Marga. Lower beings here can be humans that are in a very benighted position. And when they rise, say if they have some good karmas, or if they see some light at the end of their life, and they pass from one bardo, as the Tibetan Buddhists have taught us, you know, through the three different levels of the bardo, condition after death, 7 days, 14 days, 21 days go by, and you still haven't been able to assign yourself to an inner realm and get over this process and this problematic process of transmigration between the outer world and the lower heavens, then you fall again into worlds, sometimes more foul, Krishna says in the Gita, than the last one you visited. So the risk is there, suffering is there, you cannot deny it. And if you don't want to believe in the divine providence or God, fine, because most people that do would then assign the suffering to God. You say, oh, why does God make some suffer and why does he make others enjoy? The question really should be, why does he take some away from both? There are souls that aren't suffering or enjoying. They got over both those problems. And so they took a path towards higher thinking, higher living. That's the path of the Devayana. They're godlike. They're virya. And they're daiva. So they're not pasu anymore, animalistic. Their past lifetimes and karmas also made them animalistic. Animalistic doesn't mean necessarily just gross animalistic, although plenty of beings in the lower realms, like asuras, are very demonic. don't you see them here? Demonic beings. And they probably remanifested themselves from these lower worlds, lower heavens. Want of power, domination, and so forth. And desire for that. But some beings had a higher trajectory. Said, I think I want to go beyond. I think I want to go to my ancestors and live with them in heaven for a period of time. And both Buddha and the Dhammapada and Krishna in the Gita and Ramakrishna in the Gospel of Ramakrishna, you look at those and you see how that is not a very high leaning, just to go to a lower heaven. And so your thoughts must be pure and more divine. Your mind must become willing to open up channels towards divinity. Chit Shuddhi, a pure mind, is like one of the highest things you can get in our tradition of Vedanta, because there are many mixed minds, Shuddha, and many impure minds, Ashuddha. But Chit Shuddhi, this pure mind is very rare. So one aspires to have that. Now, some further Dharma teaching here then on the path of the lower births and the path of the fathers. I would say the path of the lower births are definitely a smoky path. The path of the fathers, I would say, is a combination of smoke and light. Noble fathers, noble ancestry, beings who were spiritually oriented, who tried to teach the Dharma to their kids, those kinds of things. The reasons that those kinds of beings might stay in the reincarnation process was to see matters through to an end. They have a family line, they want to see them get more of the Dharma, get free, and then when they see to a certain extent that that has been initiated and a connection made between these worlds by certain fathers, and you find some Upanishads left behind, or you'll find that the great masters will transcend in the body and they won't incarnate in the Pitriyana anymore, and they'll move towards the Devyana. Devyana is, much more noble and auspicious here than we would usually take it to mean, because the gods have a constant battle going on with the asuras, and so the gods are wanting to still have a desire for domination over many, many, many souls. It's a good domination. It's a power of goodness. They want to, give goodness to their votaries and so forth in these many, many billions of peopled heavens that are much higher. But they have one problem there, is they can't transcend their own godhood, because that's the one thing about the gods, is that they have this desire for overlordship. See, I was trying to think of a good word, overlordship. And so that's why you'll see back here on Earth, there are beings who want to govern over hundreds and thousands of beings called nations, and some of them might be good. And some of them, well, we know by recent times, not so good. So they're manifestations of those beings who have come down to Earth again for some, to fulfill some desire for overlordship. And it's an occult power, but it's also a noble power. It can be in the hands of a higher being, a noble power. So some sort of teachings on Dharma and these three levels in this ancient universal projection teaching of Lord Brahma. Now here on the sidebar you can see the 4 seats. And comes from the idea of Brahmapada. Brahman has 4 feet, they say, and it gets around the worlds with its 4 feet. So it's this kind of 4-footed being, you see, that goes from heaven to earth to hell and to transcendence, sort of almost like a creature would. So it's a kind of humorous teaching. But you can see there that the 4 feet are not something that you would consider like a four-armed goddess or a four-legged goddess or something. But what they mean by the 4 feet of Brahma there is waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and Turiya. It's the 4 states of consciousness. Those are the realms of the kingdom of heaven within, in 4 very generalized divisions. And all the beings that are moving through those. I mean, and you could say everyone's doing that, right? The dogs to the gods. See, they're all doing it. And what's in between in heaven? They're all waking, going to sleep and dreaming, going into deep sleep, coming back to waking. So this is the word Om. It's basically, this is the province of all worlds, lokas, nadis leading to them, and the gradations of worlds, what Ram Prasad's singing about in this song, how all sounds you hear are mantras, and practice meditation, turn your dreams into meditations, and all that is going on in this great mind of Lord Brahma. So, and we'd say Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, because the process needs to be, as the quote said here, in the waking state he's Brahma, in dreaming he's Vishnu, in deep sleep he's Rudra. It fits very well, doesn't it? Because Lord Brahma, in the waking state, everything you see here is solidified, and it's God manifest in form. But when you go into dreaming, that's Vishnu. He says, oh, everyone loves Vishnu, you see, because in dreaming everything is free, You don't have to pay for anything in the heavens, and you've got free access to all sorts of exquisite pleasures and experiences. And so Vishnu's realm is dreaming, basically. But then the whole thing comes to an end, you see, and that's where Shiva steps in and says, oh, by the way, there is a kind of a payment you have to give here for having the 3 bodies in the 3 worlds. That's called an end to it all. So Shiva comes and dissolves everything back to its source. And so this is a cosmic cycle that's hundreds and thousands of years long, and then times 4, then times 8, then times 16. And so that 4,320,000,000 year long cycle called a Mahayoga is 1 day of Lord Brahma's life. They say that to give you an idea of how long Lord Brahma is going to live and preside over that many cycles. And then how that sense of time that's so elongated and elasticized in the higher heavens is down here very slow. Like if you're suffering or in prison or something, time goes very slow. If you're having a good time, oh, time passes so fast when you're having fun, kind of thing. So all time is like, is got that press on it, that seal of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And of course, then there's Turiya. So we were going up here. I kind of jumped the gun, but waking is the jiva, and the navel is the seat. See, and then dreaming is the prana, and that's in the heart. Deep sleep is the purusha, which is the name for the soul in Samkhya, and that's at the throat. And then Turiya is Mahavishnu, that's in the head. It's the third eye to crown. So this is the way they looked at it in the ancient time of the Vedic rishis, and in their long-lasting contemplations and meditations on the Trinity. We're probably to think, and it's been said before, that before the Trinity was realized or somehow concretized in the minds of people to meditate on, they were worshipping the 5 elements as gods. Agni, Vayu, so forth. Air, fire, wind, earth, these are. And then when a long time meditation on those elements and the senses went along with him, they began to know more about the gods. And at some point, the worship of the 5 elements and 5 senses, the indriyas, turned into this concept, as it were, of the Trinity. curtains, revelations. Like Mahachamasya seeing, the heart center. After the Bhur Bhuva Swahar was earth and lower heaven and higher heaven was all that was known for a while. And then Mahachamasya meditating saw the heart center, the Maharloka, and was amazed. So these are all revelations that come to beings who dive deeper. They're not inventing something new. Lord Brahma isn't creating anew. All of this is projected in a second and withdrawn in a second. And 4,320,000,000 years don't make no never mind to Lord Shiva. They certainly wouldn't to Lord Brahma, who's just one day. So the whole thing is, and it isn't. So should we go back and read it? Neither do the worlds exist nor not exist. Neither do the Vedas and Devas exist nor not exist. Mother and father does not exist nor not exist. Only Brahman shines all the time. And so the being who is living at the head, you see, in the realm of Mahavishnu, with the third eye open, if thine eye be single, you should know the truth, is the being who is seeing all of it from the eye of Mother Kali, you see, of the Divine Mother, who presides over the Trinity. If we looked back on that chart, you'd see the 7 rishis in the Trinity here, all existing in her great projection. She's projecting the projectors. You see, she's the consciousness in them. She gave Lord Brahma the seed to create at the beginning of each cycle. She gives him a seed. So that's why Ram Prasad says, as you hear all sounds, you hear her natural mantras. Every she constitutes the letter of every alphabet, and each letter secretly bears her name. So that's why you would want to do manana on words, realize the implication of words, dive into the word, split the atom of the word or the letter, and see what's in it. In the mind is a word called Om, and everything is in it. And that's the secret of Shabda Brahma. That's the secret of the path of vibration, the path of sound. And it's so subtle that everyone's missing it. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, people come to the world and they get completely hypnotized by it. Nobody ever asked, who is Brahman? Whose worlds are these? Nobody ever asks that. Really, probably the quickest answer would be, they're your world, stupid. It's this shameful mind that vomited them out. I think we sang that a couple weeks ago, and Nyavatu was singing that. These words, these worlds, they're not my responsibility. The shameful mind has vomited them out. So, again, there and gone, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. You can see how all these teachings are going to come together in a lattice work, as it were, again, of some realization and some ability to see with a third eye everything that's happening in it, and at the same time, in one breath, give it all up and go back to your source. So otherwise, there is returning again and again. Path of the fathers, which is the Pitris, the ancestors. Path of the lower births. It's experiments in the Tiran Marga for the lot of you. See? So basically, to get up to the path of the Devayana is going to require some powerful awakening in the head. And we already said that's not the brain. That's the mind. And so we can come close to the ending of our a few more things to say about this chart, but we can come close to the ending of it all and a conclusion of our topic. Mind is the kingdom of heaven within, in that way. Now, speaking about the mother then here, because who is the consort of Lord Brahma? Ma Saraswati, the goddess of the word. She's called the Vaakdevi. So we know Vishnu has Mahalakshmi and Shiva has Parvati, or in tantric tradition, Kali. But when we look at Lord Brahma, he's got the goddess of the word for his consort. See? So that fits him, you see, because he's going to be the first, he's going to wake up from his own cosmic sleep and say the word. And she will be there to give it to him, you see. She's watching his sleep process, cosmic sleep of Lord Brahma, and she'll give him a bijam. It's called a seed. And so Vaakdevi is his consort. So here's a few things about her. 5 factors are there in her: being, shining, loving, form, and name. The first 3 pertain to Brahman. The other 2 constitute the world. Leave aside the last 2 and be intent on the former 3. Whether inside or out, practice concentration on her. So that's the Saraswati Rahasya Upanishad, which we've studied over the last few years in our retreat on Divine Mother Upanishads. There may be some 7 Divine Mother Upanishads of the 108 specifically named after the goddess. So we looked into those specifically and studied them, gathered information, and hopefully manana them through. So we revisit these Dharma wisdom charts, we revisit teachings we've had before. We are reminded of what to do our concentration process on, how at any time in any meditation, at any walk through a forest grove, or any drive along a coast, or any time we want, we can just put our mind in that mode and start manana, you see. Pretty soon that becomes a habit, and you're thinking about her or God all the time. It's just natural. And there you can see somebody like Sri Ramakrishna said, oh boy, worldly talk, that hurts my ears, you see. And he'll walk away, you see. I don't want to hear that. And so the rest of us poor schleps that aren't able to do that have to somehow put on a filter, you know, when we're at work. We're with people who don't have any wherewithal to speak of anything beyond the weather or pleasure in objects, or, you know, wartime schemes or whatever nonsense they are plotting out there in their naughty little minds. See, so basically you're looking at a process here that has the Divine Mother of the Word at the foundation of everything. All words are her own. So words of gross nature are also hers. All words are hers. All ideas that, you know, that form them. There you see, and inside of the image of her, being, shining, loving, and form and name. So her Upanishad, this is her speaking, says, well, these are my 5 facets, and you should know that 3 of them pertain to me, and 2 of them pertain to the world. Get the world behind you, name and form, and concentrate on Sat, Chit, Ananda, being, shining, and loving. See? So she's telling you herself this. Now, another quote in this divine Hiragarbhi here, this divine egg, Hiranyagarbha. The quote says by the devotee in the Saraswati Rahasya Upanishad, "Dearest Mother, greatest goddess, Saraswati, female swan among the cluster, before the faces of the 4-faced God, may the all-white Saraswati sport forever in my mind. Spouse of Brahma, whose thick tresses deck the crescent moon, thou art the stream of nectar that extinguishes samsara's heat." Samsara is, of course, the ocean of suffering. So people find themselves in it. They take refuge in Saraswati, like we just sang in this beautiful song. And they find themselves plucked out of that ocean of suffering and placed in the cool, refreshing ocean of her love. So the goddesses, devotees, sing to her in this way. And I mean, in a sense, who's ever heard of the Saraswati Rahasya Upanishad in the world? Probably not even that many of the 5 million who follow Sri Ramakrishna now in a short amount of time have studied it or read it. It's to be looked into, it's to be done manana on, it's to be realized to bring her forward, current in life, if you really want her as your guide. As Vivekananda wanted, he said, may she, the primal guide, my refuge be. That was one of his statements. May she, the primal guide, my refuge be. And this is a fully realized Nityasiddha, perfected soul. But when he came down to earth, he didn't find things all so perfect. And neither did Jesus or others. So you came here to try and help us awaken from the lower paths, reach the path of the gods and beyond. 2 more quotes, and this chart is complete. Only those who get attached to pleasure do work for the sake of its fruits. Though really the master of the senses, they become bound and take various forms, wandering constantly along the 3 pathways as a result. So the paths of return are being suggested by the forms you take: a lower form, a heavenly form, or a godlike form. And those can be paths of return for different reasons, maybe for different impetus and everything, as we were saying. But nonetheless, if you want to sport in the worlds of the Lord, if play in the fields of the Lord without karma recurring, then what you should do is do not do work for the sake of its fruits, because that's the one thing that's Krishna is saying in the Gita and so forth. And Ram says in the Ramayana, basically, that this keeps them bound to thinking. They become convinced that the worlds are real because they're getting fruits and pleasures from their work. If they can find the art of karma yoga and do it all for the sake of the Lord, or for no sake at all, then they get that secret of karma yoga, and they can move up and down the amber steps of birth and death without any impedance and without any negative risk or negative outcome, like getting caught inside a body or a world, forgetting yourself. You all probably know the story of Vishnu. He had to come down to earth to kill an asura. And the only way this asura was a great boar, could be killed was from underneath. So Vishnu had to take on the form of a sow that had tufts and cut underneath, you see. So he took on the form of this sow and came down to earth and killed that great asura. Because that asura was causing problems in all the worlds. Brahma and Shiva, were saying, and the other gods were saying, can't you go do something about that? So when Vishnu dispatched that boar, then was there in the sow's body and decided, well, maybe I'll enjoy the sow's body a little bit here. And had little piglets and ate and sported and had the joy of nursing the piglets and so forth. So the gods were like up there and in there in the heavens saying, what? We just lost Vishnu down there in the lower world, you see. We can't exist without him. What are we going to do? So Shiva said, well, let me take care of it. So he went down and manifested himself as a form, took his trident, you see, this powerful 3 worlds, 3 times kind of spear, as you might say, his trident, and immediately walked up to Vishnu and pierced him and popped his sow-like life bubble. And immediately Vishnu came out laughing, as if the whole thing had been this great play. Not just his attachment to the pig body, but the boar he killed, the whole projection of it from the very beginning, that it was all just this great play, and he was laughing and showing the ultimate fallacy and ridiculousness of the whole thing. You see, there's no birth, there's no death, there's no demons, there's no gods. Should we go back and read it again? Neither do the worlds exist nor not exist. So the Advaita, the non-dual part of it, represented so well by the Shaktis of the Trinity, are there. Saraswati, Mahalakshmi, and Kali. Now the next quote, and final quote of this chart: "He who is the one source of all the worlds brings forth everything from his own sattvic nature and leads all beings to perfection according to their own karmas, while endowing each with its distinguishing characteristics. Thus, he presides over the entire cosmos." So that was the meditation of Svetashvatar. You see, he did his manana by meditating on the alambana of Brahma. All right, I've done my alambanas on the five senses and the five objects and the dream senses and the dream objects and the mind and the ego and the intelligence. And in words, I've worked through all the tattvas. I've done my meditations on all of them. I've done my manana on all of them. I found out what there is to be known here, and now I want to find out what's to be known there, so I better meditate upon the Trinity. So I'll take up Brahma first. So here's his result of his manana. This is his nidijasana. Those souls don't just stop with personal, individual realization and conclusions. They'll put it down in the scripture and send it through their family line to you over thousands of years. Like lava running through a lava tube reaches from, thousands of feet up to the ocean. So that's a very powerful way of looking at time and its best usage, and how the Trinity is looking out over, with, he said here, most sattvic nature. See? So this is like Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva's realms, and their reasons for engaging in this as divine beings is an overlordship, as we were saying, that's entirely benign. But if you're going to want to transcend name and form completely and get to Satchidananda and merge with it and get your full enlightenment, see, then you're going to want to go to the Trinity and say, as this is also in the Upanishads, "Oh Lord, your projection is marvelous. Now I'm done with it. Will you let me through?" And then Lord Brahma says, hear that word, that hum, go in that direction, you see. Because the Om is standing at the, her word, you see it right there in the throat, and the third eye is standing at the apex of everything. That was the word she gave to him when he was projecting everything in the beginningless beginning. Both the Rig Veda and the Bible talk about that sound, or that darkness at the beginning. So that's the deep darkness of pure conscious awareness, which has no name and form. And how is that to be understood by people who are in bodies, who have no body, who has no body? See? That's a formless thing, Brahman. So people in bodies will never understand it. It doesn't matter how subtle the body gets, it's hard to understand because you're the body. And that's how you exist. The ego is there, whether it's ripe or unripe. Better if it's ripe for you. So how are you going to understand the bodiless Brahman, the formless Brahman, the nameless Brahman, the timeless, spaceless, causeless Brahman, if you don't give up your attachment to the body somehow? So it's one of the greatest subtle moves in all of spiritual life, is to hand over the ego, to Lord Brahma and say, let me through. See, this is the final gate. I've knocked, let it open, let the light shine through. Satchidananda lies behind that. And she'll be my final form. May she, the primal guide, my refuge be. Om Sato ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma Joytir Gamaya Mrichor ma Amritam Gamaya Abira Mayeti Rudrayate Dakshina Mukam Tenamam Pahinicham Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from the unreal to the real. And lead us from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother of the universe, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.